Well, let's talk about coronavirus, which is panicking the whole world. I think we need to understand some numbers and understand a few things that are extremely important for coronavirus because I think that authorities are saying sometimes very stupid things. Let me explain. I want to show you what's happening in Italy and compare it to what's happening in Germany. In Italy, we have 10,149 cases with 631 deaths, 6.2% mortality rate. In Germany, we have 1,622 cases with 2 deaths. Mortality rate 0.17%, 0.12%, I'm sorry. Now look, when we talk about infectious diseases, we need to know two things to understand if we need to get worried or not. First is how easily it spreads from one person to the other. With coronavirus, it seems that one person can infect 2 or 3 others. So, a little bit serious. But let's look at the mortality rate, which gives us a very good idea if the disease is serious or not. And I've seen authorities saying that the mortality rate is 3%, but I think this is totally wrong, and I'm explaining it. How can you understand that in Germany the death rate is 0.12% and in Italy it's 6.2%, 50 times more? Now pay attention, that's 50 times more for 2 European countries that probably have almost the same population in terms of age. How can we explain this difference? I think we have totally wrong numbers. And what do I mean by wrong numbers? We know that if we want to calculate mortality rate, you need to calculate the amount of dead people related to the amount of sick people. Well, the dead people, we always know who's dead and who's not, that's for sure. But then I think we don't know the amount of cases we're having, probably because a lot of cases are very mild, simple colds, and people don't even go to the doctor, they don't get tested. So it's probably underestimated. The number of cases is probably largely underestimated. That changes everything. A mortality rate of 3%, and this is what authorities are saying, is something quite high. It's 1 dead out of 30 sick people. While MERS was a lot worse because it was almost 40%, and SARS was a lot more too because it was almost 10%. But if we look at mortality rates in Germany and in Italy, we see there's a huge gap. How can you explain this? Well, I think that in Italy, they don't have 10,000 cases. In fact, they have 60,000 cases. And how come all these people didn't get tested? Well, I'll explain. I'm a doctor, and I see people, they come to my office, I see them at home, and I understand that everyone feels that the need to see the doctor is something very personal. Sometimes I see patients and I think, well, why did this person get so worried with so few symptoms? While I see people who have heart attacks and only call the doctor 12 hours after they started feeling the pain. So going to the doctor is a matter of 3 things. First, you think that what you have is important and you need medical advice. Second, you are worried with what you have. And third, you think that the medical advice will be helpful in any way. Of course, if you think that the doctor is useless, you don't go see him. And probably this is what's happening with coronavirus. Most cases are very mild. I think, this is my opinion, personal opinion. Probably until we're 50, 60, or 65, coronavirus goes on as a very simple cold. Very basic cold. Some fever, some muscle ache, the body's sore, some sore throat, a cough, and it's gone. So sometimes you don't think it's worthwhile going to see the doctor. That's one thing. Second thing, how many people have coronavirus and don't even know they have it? Because with viral infections, that happens a lot. You have the infection, you can test this in blood samples, and you don't feel anything because your immunity is good. So, my conclusion is that the least we can say is that we don't know mortality rates. So please, this is the first very serious idea I want to transmit. We do not know the exact figures for mortality rates up to now. Some people think it's 3%. In Italy, it's 6%, the double. In Germany, it's 20 times less, even 50 times less than in Italy. So what are the correct numbers? 0.12% like H1N1 or 6% like Italy? I think it's something in the middle of this. In South Korea, where they've decided to do a huge amount of testing, the mortality rate with 7,755 cases, the mortality rate is 0.7%. So I think that probably the mortality rate for all the population is around 0.5%. Something in the middle of 0.7 and 0.12, which is very low and very strange. But anyway, these are the numbers we have. So I think that if you want to be honest, the least you can say is that we don't know the exact figure. Now, we do know one thing, is that old people, if they're sick with corona, they might have very serious complications and might even die. So this is the second message. We know now with very serious scientific studies that coronavirus, if you're up to 60, 65 years of age, is something very simple, very low mortality rates. But that's totally different if you're older and if you have chronic diseases that come very frequently with age. Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, and lung problems, and even cancer, because you might be fighting cancer with chemo, and that lowers immunity. A second detail, which is very important, is that when we age, our immunity ages too. And when immunity ages, it's not the same immunity we had when we were young. So we know that any infection in somebody who's 70, 75, 80, 85 is a lot more serious than in a young person. Of course, you might tell me, yes, but the doctor who was 35 in China, who made the first diagnosis of corona, died from coronavirus. Yeah, okay. Well, a lot of people die in any age with infectious diseases. That happens. It's normal. I think infectious diseases can be very serious. Depends on your immunity, it depends on the aggressiveness of the virus or bacteria. So we have to understand that infectious diseases, even though we've been able to fight them very well, they still have a burden. It's not that easy to fight infectious diseases. Sometimes we feel very bad, even when we're 25. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that people who are old, when they have infectious diseases, it's always a lot worse. You know, with pneumonia, old people die very frequently, while a young adult would not. So we need to be very careful with old people. And if there's one advice that we need to give to the patients is that if you're more than 70, 75 years old and you have a chronic condition coming along with age, please be extremely careful with viral infections, whatever they might be. If you have to go outside, go, but please don't go into very crowded places. You can go to the supermarket, wash your hands very frequently. Don't put your hand on your face. That's very important. because the hand is full of germs, bacteria, viruses, and you put them on the face and they go inside nose, mouth, eyes, and this is where we get the infection. So old people have to wash their hands a lot more. They're the ones who have to be a lot more careful. Because if there's one thing that we do know with this coronavirus is that if for old people, it's very serious. The mortality rate, this is something we'll need to check as the infection goes by, because numbers are so different that you cannot do a correct estimate. I think all numbers are wrong. I think what the conclusion I have with these numbers is that old people have to be very careful. People under 60, they, of course, need to avoid the infection. They don't need to be so much scared. This is the basic advice. Another thing which is very important is that we have a lot of vaccinations that can be done for old people. And sometimes we forget that when we age, we have vaccines that need to be taken. I'll produce a video talking about vaccination for old people, because sometimes we forget we can have these vaccinations and get at least some protection. But the main message with this video is, one, we don't know mortality rate, so don't listen to authorities when they say it's 3%, it's not. It ranges from 0.12 to 6. 0.12 to 6. That's 50 times. How can somebody say something when numbers are so different? First thing. Second thing, and the message. This is the second part of the message, which is extremely important. Old people need to be very careful. Children who are sick should not see their grandfathers, grandmothers. And if an old person has an infection, he needs to see the doctor to try to understand what is going on, follow up the medical condition, and make sure that this old person is taking good care of herself. This is very important. Third thing, of course, is for vaccination. This is what I had to say today. And as soon as we have more numbers, interesting numbers, numbers that deserve investigation and a discussion, I'll publish a video, because I think this is very important. We're getting totally wrong numbers, and we need to know what is correct and what is not. I've seen a lot of people arguing that in Italy there are a lot more old people than in Germany. I don't think this is correct. That does not justify 50 times more dead people in Italy than in Germany. Okay? Have a nice day.